Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
We have by and large finished our discussion on print. A little bit of issues about print are going to be discussed in a future lecture, and that is the lecture on copyright and authorship, where we are going to deal with the various media together. But for today, we are going to ready ourselves for our journey to move away from print, first into other media like photography and films, and then into the electronic, that is the television, before we move to the digital media. Right now, let us follow the discussion on the other media, that is the photography and films. And for that, we were going to now concentrate, we are going to come back to some important theorists who will help us understand the development of these new media. Today, we are going to take up a very important essay by Walter Benjamin, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. I strongly encourage you to read the essay. Hopefully, after today's lecture, it will be reading the essay would become easier. You may have to read the essay several times to be able to grasp its meaning, but please do not be daunted. I am going to try and explain the essay to the best of my ability in today's lecture. Before we begin, it is very important to note where Walter Benjamin actually emerges from, because that has an effect on his theorization. Clearly, he was a man who worked, he was a theorist who worked in the early 20th century, and therefore, he lived through the development of this media of photography and films, and therefore, was in a position to theorize it. And he also was born in Germany, he was a Jew, which brings us to this question of his relationship with fascism. Once Hitler comes to power in 1932, Benjamin, like many other of his fellow German Jews, go on an exile. He runs away from Germany, and he keeps on traveling through Europe for a fair bit of time, through about 8 years of his lives, till he finally tries to, before the imminent fall of France, he finally tries to flee Europe, trying to escape from the Nazi concentration camps and the Gestapo. In fact, he was also imprisoned for a little while earlier, but ultimately in 1940 he is unable to escape, and he commits suicide by an overdose of morphine. So, that is the story of the life of Walter Benjamin and his very direct and almost fatal confrontation with the Nazis and the Nazi regime. So, needless to say that this was and he actually wrote this particular essay while in France during this particular period. So, his interest in understanding fascism and its processes is what had a very great influence on this particular essay. But I must also warn you that this particular essay it goes beyond the immediate interests that we have in this particular course, where we are interested in understanding the work of art. But simply because we are taking on this essay, we will look at all its aspects. So, let us not get lost this course may not actually deal with the issue of understanding fascism and its processes, but because this is the logic through the series of arguments that Benjamin works through, and his arguments actually help us understand the position of art in a changing sort of within changing media, is something that we need to understand the essay in its entirety. So, let us move on with the essay. Benjamin points out that work of art has always been reproducible, as ultimately a work of art is an expression of an idea. So, and the difference between a work of art is different from a work of a physical kind, let us say a pen, right. Now, a pen is a physical thing. I mean, pen has a singular existence. You cannot, it is not transferable. If someone has this pen, when I have the pen, you cannot have it. Whereas the idea is works very differently. Idea, if I have an idea, you can also have the idea at the same point of time. Teaching is a process of that kind of transfer of idea. So, we will look at the issue of intellectual property later on in the course, but that is the fundamental sort of understanding of the work of art, that it is reproducible. At the end of the day, a work of art is an expression of a particular idea. So, if you have an idea, you can have an expression. That expression could be multiple, the expression could be similar to another expression, right. So, and that is what Benjamin is going to deal with in this particular essay. He says that now the processes of reproduction that we have been dealing with, there is a process of manual reproduction, that is either that is bodily reproduction through bodily means, either the oral or the manuscript, as we talked about, but Benjamin's domain is much bigger, it is art. So, you can look at the plastic arts, you can look at paintings, graphic art. So, sculpture and and other kinds of art forms which are made without the help of any mechanical device. Now, mechanical reproduction historically has been very rudimentary. I mean, the only he writes in the essay that the only technique of reproduction known to the Greeks, that is in the ancient times, was the stamping and founding. They would create maybe some toys, some coins and other kinds of things. We know that within the Indus Valley there would be clay tablets which would be created. We have looked at some of them. Seals would be a way of stamping authority, but so mechanical reproduction was of a very rudimentary kind. But it is with the coming of print that we have seen, we have witnessed how the rate of reproduction of works of art, primarily that of written works, have increased phenomenally after the coming of print, right. So, therefore, that brings about a certain transformation with human relationship with works of art. Other than written, print has also made the reproduction of graphic arts easier and possible. So, there are historically various kinds of techniques of reproduction of graphic art were used. There would be woodcuts, there will be etching or lithography. So, various kinds of ways in which mechanical reproduction of graphic art would also take place. However, these are not as these are qualitatively different from what he is going to discuss, is the nature of reproduction of graphic art through photography. Now, he then discusses, he is going to discuss several concepts and then all these concepts would add up together to his understanding of what fascism how fascism works on culture. So, he argues that the value of a work of art is derived from several qualities. It is derived from its uniqueness, the fact that a particular object is unique. It is it has no comparable, no particular copy. There are no copies which are in existence. And the uniqueness of a particular work of art, because as we have seen, in case of manuscript writing as well, we have constantly noted that each copy of a manuscript is unique. It is different from other copies of the manuscript, right? And there would be certain errors, certain changes, and therefore and that is something that we noted, that leads to a certain degree of confusion vis-a-vis the understanding between scholars, because they might actually be referring to different versions of a manuscript. Within a certain community, they would look at maybe a singular version of a manuscript, but across various scholarly communities, they would be looking at various versions. So, within a certain community where they are sharing a certain manuscript, and manuscripts are few and far between, that would lead to what we looked at, the bubble, right. So, while the uniqueness of the manuscript, or therefore the work of art, does lead to certain difficulties in analytical understanding, its uniqueness actually lends it value. All right. It's and the fact that it has a uniqueness in the presence in time and space, that there can be only a singular work of a certain kind. Let us say, if you look at a monument, for example, a particular monument, let us say the Leaning Tower of Pisa, that monument, there are copies of it elsewhere, but that particular monument is unique. It exists in a certain time and space. It has a certain history of its own, right, and it would have also undergone alterations, indeed deteriorations, but it is what that object carries with it. That object, that work of art carries with it all these histories, and included in that history is the issue of the changes in ownership. That particular work of art may have gone through various historical moments through which ownership has changed. Now, we need to understand, this is something that we are going to discuss a little later, is that there are two kinds, there could be, we can say there are two kinds of works of art, right. One which have a uniqueness in a certain time and space, the other is that particular work of art is made for a particular spot altogether. However, a certain work of art could be prepared by the artist, and while preparing it, the artist actually does not know where it is going to be installed. Someone goes, purchases it, and takes it away. So, there are various ways in which works of art are created through history. The second example is a more commercial one. So, you understand that it is treating art as a commodity, and if you are treating art as a commodity, it occurs in a society where commodities do come into existence. Commerce in art does come into existence within a patronage structure. Clearly, the artist knows where that art is going to be installed. All right. So, let us work through some of these arguments through this particular essay, which the arguments which this essay is making. The once produced, a work of art could be reproduced. and in this particular case he is primarily talking about manual reproduction, that the work of art could be reproduced for several purposes, either for apprenticeship. There would be historically there would be learning of art requires one to actually copy, make exact copies of the work of the master, right. In fact, when people go to art schools, when children go to art schools, one of the ways in which they are taught is that they have to make a copy of a particular painting that is a particular work of art that is given before them. They have to be able to copy not only the outline, but also the brush strokes and other details, the coloring, the light and shade combination, and all the things. So, within apprenticeship, copying of art reproduction has a certain usage. The other reason could be that the masters themselves, in order to propagate their ideas, they make copies of a certain work of art, particularly if the work of art is representative of a certain larger idea beyond the work of art itself, then they would undertake reproduction of the work of art. The other reason why a work of art could be reproduced within a system of manual reproduction would be for forgery, to actually make use of the valuation that the work of art has for unscrupulous means, to actually try to gain monetarily out of the reputation or the valuation of the work of art. Now, the reproduction, any reproduction of a work of art can lack in uniqueness in time and space. It lacks authority, and this is specifically also true of any works of art which are mass produced. There is no uniqueness. I will come to this question of uniqueness later on, but its valuation is minor. The valuation is more emotional. Let us say when they were within a manuscript culture, there would be few and far between copies of particular manuscript would be few and far between. Therefore, a certain manuscript would be unique. In fact, very often manuscripts of particular texts are referred to by their location or sometimes by their ownership, right. And but however, when print comes into being, when printed books come into being, there could be hundreds and thousands of copies of a particular book, and you can basically pick up any book and they will by and large be the same. But sometimes individuals, because they may have a signed copy of a particular book, or they may have marginal notes. So, any manual input into that work, into that book would render that book unique, but the uniqueness of that book is tied to the individual who owns the book or for whom it is unique. If I have been gifted a particular book and someone has inscribed my name on it and written a message on it, it might be valuable for me more than the cost of the book. There will be a certain emotional attachment, but that attachment will not be true for other people. However, if there is a famous personality who has signed the book, or a famous personality who had owned the book and made notes on it, that book would have a greater degree of value beyond the person who owns the book. The valuation of that work of art will be a whole lot more. So, this is a uniqueness which does not emanate from that particular copy of the mass produced object, right, and therefore, it lacks authority, and the authenticity of that work of art is interfered with we do not in cases of mass produced works, we do not really know who has produced it or where it has come from, right, or what routes it has been through. And then after this, Benjamin focuses on the very singularly important concept of aura, and he says that the authenticity of a thing is the essence of all that is transmissible from its beginning, ranging from its substantive duration to its testimony to the history which it has experienced, right. Now, what he tries to suggest is that a certain object, when it exists, when it comes into existence, it carries with it a certain history, right. Now, in case of manually produced objects, a certain it would be attached to a certain kind, a certain individual, a certain personality, a certain time and space, in a way in which a mass produced object will not be. To give you an instance, and this is not necessarily only true of works of art. Let us say we engage a carpenter. You engage a carpenter to prepare something in your house, and the carpenter comes, he measures, he starts his work, he gets the wood, gets all his implements, sits down and prepares the piece of work. Now, while preparing the piece of whatever it could be a chair, it could be a piece of furniture, he is custom making that piece to the requirements that you have, your household has. Not only that, the carpenter is also bringing his own intelligence, his own creativity into creating that furniture. The same requirement would have been satisfied, would have been put together very differently by another carpenter, right. So, you sometimes for a particular kinds of works you would want to engage a certain carpenter. So, this person can do the work perfectly, or certain individuals can like the work of particular carpenters. There is a certain kind of synchrony between the ways of thinking, and therefore, says I like this person, whereas a friend of yours may like someone else, some other carpenter's work, and you may not like that person at all. This could right. So, and then when that particular piece of furniture comes into usage, that particular furniture will remind you of the time in which it has been created. Maybe if you shift houses, that piece of furniture will remind you of the house that you have been in. So, objects carry with them a certain memory, all right, and that particular object, that particular piece of furniture will carry with it the personality of that particular carpenter. Well, in this particular case, of course, you know that this is who the carpenter is, but sometimes if it is a hand me down or an object which has been purchased second hand, you may not be aware of who the carpenter is. That is because that particular it's a question of how great that aura is. The aura becomes greater when we know that there is greater amount of personality which is embedded in a particular piece of work. So, a Chip and Dale furniture would have far greater aura of its creator embedded within it, right. Whereas, mass produced objects, a piece of furniture which has been created, which has come from the factory, we would not know who the worker who has worked on it. We would only know maybe the corporate house which has created it, the company which has created it, but there would be no great degree of aura that is there of the specific worker who has worked on it. Because the specific worker, we know that within an assembly line system of production, one single worker may not have worked on a particular piece of furniture. They would be working on specific tasks to complete that piece of furniture within an assembly line. So, therefore, with mass produced objects, the level of the aura would come down, all right. The only and though that object will still retain a certain degree of aura, but that aura would be limited to the contact between the user and the object, which may not include its history of being made or its past history, in case it is an object which is being purchased in the from a resale, right. If it is being purchased from a resale, you may not be aware of what its history has been. Whereas, in case of important works of art, the provenance, the history of its changes of ownership is something that becomes part of that piece of work. Now, the aura of Benjamin talks about the aura of natural objects. Natural objects are unique and permanent, right. They do not have parallel. They are not reproducible in that unique time and space. You cannot create a certain object of natural wonder at another place, because it's unique time and place. You have to be there, you have to go to that particular location in order to be able to perceive or perceive that work of art, that natural object within its particular location. And therefore, natural objects can have auras, or an aura which is unique and permanent, right. Of course, there are cases where natural objects are destroyed by human action, but that is not what Benjamin is concerned at the moment. But for art, the aura is transient, and transient specifically because any work of art is subject to deterioration. It is reproducible, because at the end of the day, any work of art is an expression of an idea, and since the idea can be passed on from one person to another, that idea can have multiple expressions, right. So, therefore, the work of art is reproducible. By the very process in which it comes into being, it can be reproduced as well, right. So, art can derive aura, as we have already tried discussing. Art derives aura from its history, from its authority, and understand authority. The word authority derives from authorship, that is the creator, which in our example was the carpenter, but we will look at artists who can be the authors of particular pieces of work, right. So, it derives from the authority, because the artist's personality gets embedded in that object of art altogether, and its authenticity, the fact that there are ways in which that object can be authenticated to be in possession of that particular history and that particular authority. In fact, part of art historians, the work of art historians is to actually authenticate the history of objects of art and the authority of these pieces of art. Now, the historical testimony is linked to the authority of the object, right. So, a certain object, there could be a certain claim that this certain object has been through a certain lineage, a certain provenance. We know that a certain work of art could have been in place in a particular city, at a particular town, and created by a certain historical figure, and now it has changed hands. It was then in the ownership of a particular merchant or an aristocratic person, and today it is in a particular museum or owned privately or whatever. That history is authenticated by art historians through research, through testimonies, and that is linked to the authority of the object. If there is a doubt on that history, then it affects the aura and the value of that work of art. If someone says, no, this particular painting does not look like it was painted by Rembrandt, it may have been a forgery, someone trying to pose as Rembrandt to encash the market value of Rembrandt, right. Or you would often have works of art which come to the market and purportedly posing as a piece which has a much greater history, but later on it is figured out that there has been some careful counterfeiting to show a certain amount of decay which would fool the buyer to think that on the naked eye you would think that this is probably 1,000 years old, but it is actually not, right. Careful investigation, forensic investigation would actually disprove that history and therefore rob the work of art of that particular work of the value that it once enjoyed. In fact, historical research can also render a certain work valuable. Certain times historically people would have thought that certain painting is a forgery, but further research shows that no, this is not a forgery, this is actually by let us say Da Vinci or Van Gogh, we do not know, all right. So whatever the historical records of a particular work of art is proportional to the kind of valuation it has, all right. Now, he says that aura is that which withers in the age of mechanical reproduction. You know, with mechanical reproduction, the work of art loses its aura, right. He says, and in order to explain this, we understand another concept that Benjamin brings in. He says valuation of works of art could be derived from two kinds of valuations. First is the cult value. The cult value is ceremonial, that a particular work has a value in ritual practices. This is true of deities, for example. And in case where it has a certain ceremonial value, very often we would see that the existence is actually hidden. For example, statue of a divinity in a temple. As you can see in that image, this is a painting of Lord Jagannath in the temple in Puri, and as would be true of most deities, they are not out there in the open, they are there hidden somewhere, hidden as in enclosed within a certain structure, within a certain temple structure, not to be openly accessible. You have to undertake certain ritual practices in order to be able to view that particular deity. At the end of the day, the idol of a deity is a work of art, because it is artificial, it is created, it is an expression of an idea, but it has a certain ceremonial, what he says, cult value involved with it, right. There is a certain tradition within which that particular object becomes valuable. There are instances where idols have been removed from temples and placed in within museum, then it loses its cult value, right. We will come to that in a moment, but the cult value derives from that specific location in which that object or work is placed, right. Now, so the earliest works, artworks actually originate in the service of ritual. It is prepared, when the deity is being prepared, it is prepared for that particular temple. It is not mass produced. We will for the moment assume the way in which religious practices did occur for let us say in historic times. Now, in present day one may be creating a temple by buying an idol off the market, but we are in that case the temple is almost a mass created through a product of mass production. So, let us not go into the modifications of the ways in which temples are created, but let us look at the specific ways in which historical temples have been created. And it says the earliest works of art originate in the service of ritual. The value is derived from the location of its original use. When it is removed, when the deity is removed from its original use, it does not have a value. So, if we come back to this example that we just talked about of a temple which is created in a certain locality where the deity may have been purchased off the market, in that deity may not, that particular idol may not have that kind of a value. In fact, people do actually change those deities, but you do not think of changing deities in more famous temples, right, because that idol is tied to that particular location, and changing it will change or take away all its ritual significance. So, any object, even if it is a divine object, even if it is of religious significance, if it has been a product of mass production, if it is created through mass production, its value is much reduced, its replaceability is increased. Whereas, in case of objects with ritual significance, they are not replaceable, the valuation becomes almost priceless, right. However, the other ways in which works of art can derive value, which is almost opposite of that of the cult value, is the exhibition value. It derives value from view. People come to watch it. What you see in that image is the room in Louvre in Paris where the Mona Lisa is kept, and everybody is sort of eager to see the Mona Lisa, and even if they are not able to see the Mona Lisa, they just want to take a picture of the Mona Lisa through their own mobile phones. If not through your own eye, you have your camera eye take a look, take a view of it. So, here the work of art derives its value from viewership, whereas in case of the divinity in a temple, it would be by the hiding of it, because you have to undergo certain ritual processes in order to enter. You are supposed to take off your shoe, wash your feet, then you enter. So, that is why the enclosure, it is not readily available, right. Whereas, it is true that even to watch the Mona Lisa in the Louvre, you have to participate in certain activities, but those are not ritual activities. You have to pay at the gate and you have to go through the security in order to get inside to get a view of the Mona Lisa. But those activities are not ritual, they are not purifying activities of purifying. There could be secretizing activities, there could be commercial activities, but not ritual activities. And objects that derive their value from view, or objects which possess exhibition value, they need mobility. They do not derive their valuation from specific locations. that object then becomes installable in any location. A certain idol, when it is which is removed from the temple and placed in a museum or stolen from the temple and sold to a art collector, it changes its value, it loses its cult value and it assumes exhibition value, right. So, by becoming mobile, it loses out on its ceremonial value, its ritual value, because it is and the thing becomes important, valuable, because it is there in my possession. It could have been anywhere else. That is why it is valuable for me. That is why it is valuable, that right now it is in my possession and therefore, I derive the value from it. Any wealth, any piece of wealth, any wealth, it could, if whoever the possessor, I mean it could be a banknote. If it is in my hand, I am the owner of it, I enjoy its value. In somebody else's hand, that other person enjoys its value. Whereas, in the case of a ritual object, the possessor does not have the value. The valuation comes only when that ritual object is placed in its rightful location, not in any location, right. So, it is only beyond the Renaissance, with the coming of the early modern era, that the art object was freed from its ritual. That it was possible now to have artistic objects which have a secular value, away from its ritual value, all right. So, till the Renaissance, there would be artistic objects which are created on the walls of churches, through stained glass, through frescoes, decorations on particular caskets, furniture. But they derived their valuation from a particular location. They had a certain ritual significance. But after that, they could actually the same art form, same kind of artistic techniques developed and changed and moved to the canvas. The important thing about the canvas is it is relocatable, it is mobile, it can move, right. This is true within our subcontinent as well. You would find that a lot of if you go to some markets, you would be able to buy various kinds of painting, Gond painting, Madhubani painting. In fact, and these kind of painting styles are primarily supposed to have been paintings on walls, right. So, this in a specific location, it cannot not removable. But now, with the coming of market, in order to provide a certain sustenance to the artists and for the longevity of these artists within a market society, these art forms have been taken off from the walls, or have been derived from the walls and now been put on canvas, on paper. You can buy it off the market and frame it and put it up. They are still manually produced, but they are not mechanically produced, but they are mobile, and they derive now from exhibition value rather than from the cult value. In fact, over the last 10 years or so, artists who earlier would be doing paintings on temples in Kerala have now started developing the same kind, who would print frescoes on temple walls, have now started developing techniques through which they can reproduce the same kind of art on mobile surfaces like bamboo and other kinds of devices, other kinds of surfaces, which can then be purchased off the market and adorn walls of middle class households in cities and urban areas. thereby providing a certain sustenance to the artist. So, what we see here is that with a certain kind of market mechanism, and that is the linkage with the coming of modernity, the object of art gets a certain mobility. We saw mobility is something that is that modernity actually brings in. We saw it brings in urbanization, it leads to mobility of labor, it also leads to mobility of the produce, right. So, these two, but both these, what unites both these values, the cult value and the exhibition value within a manual production, is that they both derive from the domain of tradition. There is a certain tradition which adds to the value of that work of art. Now, this tradition is alive, it is changeable, the tradition is changeable, but retains the history and tradition. So, when the Gaunt painting is stops being only ones which are on walls of particular communities, or their houses, they and comes to the canvas and gets relocated in a very different location than what it has historically been. This mobile derivation of the Gaunt painting, this canvas derivation of the Gaunt painting, tries to retain that history, that tradition, all right. And the object itself has a certain history for that particular person who has purchased it, who would remember if it has been a gift, who has gifted, if it has been purchased during a particular trip, where it will remind one of that particular trip, of a journey, it comes as a souvenir. So, traditions could be of various kinds, and a particular valuation of that tradition would continue to be alive, changeable, but alive. But mechanical reproduction, what it does is it detaches the object from the domain of tradition. If the Gaunt painting is printed, then it detaches it from the domain of tradition. It liquidates the traditional value of the cultural heritage, because it does not bring with it that aura, that it is something that has been derived. It has been produced by a machine which has altogether been very which is devoid of that particular tradition. The only thing that it continues to retain is not the process of its creation mechanically, but the manual creation of maybe the design. That is the only reason why that manual why a mechanically produced painting would have a certain value. Well, when you buy textiles, hand created, let us say, embroidery would be of a far greater valuation than machine made embroidery, right. So, there is a certain different degree of valuation, and the valuation simply does not come from the fact that a certain amount of labor has gone into it, but that labor becomes valuable because manual reproduction has a greater degree of valuation. Mechanical reproduction is precisely detached from the domain of tradition, far greater. It is not altogether distant, it is not completely losing sight of tradition, it tries to derive that tradition, but that tradition is far greater detached. The distance becomes a whole lot more. So, this loss of with that loss of tradition, it depreciates the object from the quality of presence. And in this particular case, Benjamin is particularly referring to the specific forms that he is going to actually discuss, which he actually discusses in the essay, and these are photography and films, and that is where you would understand that the importance of it is that these objects can be anywhere. They are produced and then they are not unique. They can be in multiple locations and multiple points of time. The specific objects do not have any locational history which is common to them, right. That authenticity is interfered with. So, with mechanical reproduction, the object moves, as he says, from uniqueness to plurality. So, if you look at the Eiffel Tower in Paris, you have to be there to be able to see it. There is no way you can see can have a one-on-one sort of relationship with the Eiffel Tower, physical relationship with the Eiffel Tower, without being there in Paris in that particular location at any point of time. Someone may bring a souvenir to you, but the souvenir also derives its certain value from the fact that someone who loved you had been to Paris and got that souvenir for you. So each reproduced object in its own particular situation reactivates the object that has been reproduced. So that souvenir actually reactivates your memory of your visit to Paris, or your memory of visit to Agra, or reactivates the relationship or the bond that you shared with someone who has been to that space, that location. Its valuation does not derive from itself. Its valuation, that particular souvenir, does not derive its value from itself. It derives its value from the relationship with the person who has gifted it to you, or your own journey to that place of origin. Very similar to when you stand in front of a particular painting by a famous painter, let us say Da Vinci. Then when you are standing in front of that particular painting, you realize that you feel a certain presence of Da Vinci himself, because this is the object in front of which he stood. Or when you go to a museum and you see a letter which has been written by a famous personality, let us say Mahatma Gandhi, then what you feel is the aura of that famous personality. And this is the very paper on which he had written. So it carries with it the aura, that particular piece carries with it the aura of the person who has been responsible for creating of that letter. It is very different from machine generated letters, which are automatically signed. They will not carry any that kind of an aura. Very interestingly, sometime back there was a particular case when a famous leader of one of the important countries of the world, he had birthday wishes, and there were many of them, and he tweeted and said that or his office claimed that he has read each and every name of the people who have wished him. Now, someone calculated and said that if he were to read each and every one of them, then it would probably take him 10 whole days to read every single name. So obviously it is not possible. But this desire to claim that there is a certain authenticity is something that human beings try to ensure. That I had written, I had made a birthday wish, I had sent a postcard, and this person had actually read my piece of writing and feel a certain kind of connection. That is what human beings try to derive from their work, their effort. But with machine produced algorithms, that aura, that connection is not retained, it is lost. However, what is something that is lost can be gained in other kinds of ways. Mechanical reproduction can be finer in certain aspects. For example, in photography, specific angles of an object could be viewed, which may not be possible in real life, like zoom, close up, or a distant wide angle shot. Specific techniques of photography, you could have higher exposure or the lower exposure or higher shutter speed. These are certain mechanical ways in which, or infrared, where our eyes may not have that power. The human eye is an extremely powerful has an extremely powerful set of lenses. My own eyes have lost a bit of those powers, so I need a certain device to be able to retain certain that bit of that power there. But still, the human eye is a most sophisticated set of lenses which are there, but then they are limited. So the camera can sometimes enhance the capacity of the human eye, and it can have a greater reach. Mechanical reproduction, as we have seen with print, it has an exponential reach. It can reach far greater distances than what manual reproduction can undertake. Now, he discusses photography. His discussion of he is going to move to the discussion of film and photography, and he discusses photography as a form of mechanical reproduction. The interesting thing about photography, this is something that we had encountered with Marshall McLuhan, that he says is that the photography is an extension of the eye, the ability of the eye to see. Like the medium is an extension, any form of technology is an extension of the human body, the human limbs. The photography has the capacity of creating the image faster than the hand can draw. So, when you conceive a certain at the speed at which the eye can see almost is what photography can actually replicate that to a great extent, much faster than the way the hand can draw. An interesting thing about photography is that there is no original. There can never be an original, because all that the camera produces is a negative. Now, this is interesting because many of you would never have used actual physical analog camera with a film, but certainly 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, that is the kind of camera that Benjamin is talking about, where there would be the film which is inside, on which the light impression is formed, and what it results in is a negative. The negative is not the photograph. The intended photograph is the positive which is created out of it, and a certain negative can create any number of prints, any number of positives, and each positive, depending on the way it has been actually printed, it has been developed, would produce can produce a very different kind of image. There could be a matte finish, or there could be a glossy finish, or there could be one with a greater exposure or the lower exposure, or various kinds of ways in which the print can be produced. So, there is no original. and therefore, it is not unique and not authentic, right. There could be multiple kinds of images which are taken, because the positives are not unique. The negative can produce any number of positives, right. So, that leads to a certain loss, and he says the development of film derives from photography. So, some of the issues, some of the issues that we have discussed in the with respect to photography also applies to film, because what is film? Film is but the moving image. And so, he says that since there is no original, and this is the crucial crux of what he is trying to discuss, that since there is no original, this historically causes a certain reversion, and he looks upon photography as that classic case of place where there is no original, and this is true even of print, is not it? Because even in print, in mechanical reproduction, technology, printing technology, we looked at the typographer who actually puts together the various typefaces into the lattice, and once the lattice is created, then impressions are taken, and the quality of the impression will depend on the ink that is used, the kind of pressure that is used, the kind of paper that is used, and it can produce different kinds of versions, right. So, therefore, which is the original? Is it the lattice? Is it the print? So, actually there is no original, if you think of it. One can say yes, if we say that the original is the first impression that is made by a particular printer, everything else is non-original, or everything else is a pirated copy. There is a very different kind of issue about intellectual property that we are getting into, but that sense of originality is enforced legally or ethically, it is not there physically, whereas the Mount Everest is original, the Mona Lisa painted is original, everything else is a copy of it. Wherever there is human intervention or natural intervention, that is original. In case of mechanical reproduction, there is no original, everything is but a copy. The fact of the work of art in the mechanical reproduction not having original actually causes a reversal in the function of art, from ritual to politics. I would like to sort of modify this a little bit. We did see that with the coming of the early modern, the ritual function of art had moved on to a more secular function of art, what one would say to a commercial function of art. But if we take both the commerce and the ritual together, then this shift to the political is something that is important out here, because we have already seen how print, with the coming of print, politics becomes an important field in which print actually operates, and of course, Benjamin is talking about modern day politics, all right. So, from ritual to a political significance of art is something that interests Benjamin. And to explain this, he contrasts, he is going to use a contrast between film and other forms of manual production of art. This first contrast is between painting and films. Painting is a particular form which is to be viewed by one person at any one point of time. There are of course other forms of visual art which can be viewed by many people together, There could be, for example, there could be a monument or sculpture which can be viewed by various people together, of course, in a museum setting primarily. But that is because that particular piece of work can house so many people, right. But there is no event that happens at that particular point of time, all right. So, each person's relationship with that particular painting is individual, all right, and it allows contemplation. So, he is actually looking at a situation where he is talking about where the painting is being approached or is being viewed, is being partaken by one person individually, not in a mass setting. Typically in museums, if you have a painting, there would be a couch or a seat on which, or a bench opposite to it. You are supposed to sit and contemplate. The painting is devised in a way in which it is enjoyed through a contemplative mode, whereas the film is mass consumed. The way it is designed, of course, with the coming of you realize that this is an essay which is about 100 years old. With the coming of personal devices, the film is now moving to, once again, individual mode of viewing, right. It is individual as well as collective, in the sense that people may have left comments on that film, maybe on Netflix or on YouTube. But for the moment, let us not, we will encounter all that when we come to social media, but let us not look at those examples, because that is going to make our understanding of Benjamin more difficult, because Benjamin did not have access to the modern technologies, our contemporary technologies of our day. So, he was looking at a film within a film theater, which is meant for mass consumption. That is how it is designed. A film is meant for mass consumption, for collective viewing, and therefore, there are collective responses. The painting is not meant for collective responses, it is meant for contemplation, but films are made for collective responses. And the moment these responses and when people respond to each other, then these attitudes can coincide. When someone likes a particular scene, you can hear their responses, all right. So, it is something that is meant for mass consumption, right. And and he says that it does not allow, the film as a form, though it is a visual form, does not allow contemplation, because it is a moving image. There is a constant supply of image. Even before you can actually respond to one image, the other image comes into being. So, there is a constant repetition of images which is actually creating the moving image. The moving image is actually plays on the human eye to be able to perceive individual images, and therefore, what it seems to us is an illusion. It seems to us that it's a frame rate, number of frames per second is that what creates the moving image. What it actually picks up is the camera is picking up are single images which are played out very fast on the screen, and so we think of it as a moving image. So, this is a case of a reception, he says, in a state of distraction. And he says human perception of particular forms of art can be guided in two ways. One is by contemplation, reflection on that. The other is by habit or guidance. That is, because if in the absence of contemplation, it is habit or guidance that the way we are taught to respond to a certain work, we respond to it. The audience is told that this is what you should be going to watch the film for, and that could happen to various ways, through reviews, through publicity, through advertisement, through discussion among friends, circles. That creates a certain habit of consumption of particular forms, in this particular case the film. However, what the film loses in terms of contemplation, it gains as a form, he says, through opening it up, opening the media up to greater analysis. As we have seen already, that photography can perceive a whole lot more than the human eye, and the camera, the film camera can actually, and the film projection can actually achieve a lot more. A slow motion or a close up, what you see in that image is the popping of corn, kernel of corn. What is popcorn? Creation, the mechanism of creation of popcorn, which the human eye does not perceive, but the camera is able to perceive much more succinctly. It extends comprehension, it opens it up to greater analysis. Then he looks at the distinction between theatre and film. Both are played out in the auditorium, but are different. Theatre is ephemeral, and here I would like you to make a connection to our discussion on oral, the oral narratives. Oral narratives are performative forms, as I said, they are ephemeral, each occurrence is different. In the theatre, the actor can adjust to the audience and temper his or her performance according to the temperament or the responses that are being got from the audience. Whereas in films, the actor's performance is fixed, the actor performs once, may assume an audience. It is very much like this lecture. If I were teaching in a classroom, I would be responding to students. If I find after saying a certain bits of words that the students have not been able to comprehend, or if there are certain questions from the students, I can stop and I can answer that. Whereas that is the physical performance. But here, when I am speaking before a camera, I am constantly trying to understand, trying to predict whether, or judge whether the students are able to, will be able to understand what I am trying to say. Of course, the process of clarification is there. There is the forum where you can ask questions and I shall respond to those questions. But here the audience is being assumed. Once this is recorded and edited and uploaded, that performance, that this lecture gets fixed, right. So, in the theatre, the actor portrays and embodies a character at a certain moment of time, performs at once. So, if it is a 2-3 hour performance, during that period the actor goes through that performance at once, or in a particular scene. If we break it down at the scene level, once he is on stage, the actor performs without a break, whereas in film he or she can have multiple takes. Even a single scene can be taken on different, could be shot on different days almost. So, these are fragmented performances. There is more estrangement from the character, and he says, and Benjamin says that this is performance without aura. The aura of the actor is, because when when the audiences are watching a film and an actor performing there, the actor is not there, whereas if you go to a theater and some famous actor is performing, the actor is actually there. So, you go to see that actor perform. The two are qualitatively different, with or without the aura. So, whereas theater, he says, is a cult form, it is unique and authentic, because it is located within a particular location. The audience has to go to the theater to be able to watch it. The theater cannot come to I mean the performers and the audience have to be at the same location, whereas in the case of the film, it can be performed, it can be projected, it can be shown and enjoyed, partaken anywhere without any additional effort being made by the actors, right. So, here the audience being removed from the actor removes them from the ritual presence of the actor. The audience is not overawed by the presence of the actor, and therefore, the audience can take the position of a critique. The audience takes the position of the camera, because remember, the camera can also sort of open the image up for analysis, extends the comprehension. So, when he says that the audience takes the position of the camera, he means to say that the audience is able to analyze much more carefully, and this is something that we have seen in the case of print as well. The very presence of multiple texts allows greater degree of analysis of the text itself, of ideas that surround the text, that are embodied in the text. And this position of critical position is not an approach that can be adopted towards cult objects, he says. For those of you who study theatre, you would remember that one of Benjamin's contemporaries and associates, in fact, Benjamin did write about Brecht's techniques of theatre. Bertolt Brecht, German dramatist, also someone who went on an exile during the Nazi regime. Brecht developed the technique of alienation in theatre, precisely to ensure that the audience gets removed from the action. He used certain techniques through which he constantly wanted the audience to remember that what they are watching is a performance and not a slice of life or real life, not to get sucked into the action, because he wanted the audience to take the position of a critique. And that is what Benjamin says that the film as a mode can do, can engage in a critical position to whatever is being viewed. But this position is something that is subverted. The market tries to nullify this effect. The market does not particularly take kindly to the position of the audience as a critique, because a critical position will then empower the audience, and the market cannot deal with a powerful audience. Because a critical audience would try to direct the market, but market only wants to be directed through profit, not through criticism. So, the market tries to nullify this effect, and what it does, according to Benjamin, is that it creates the cult of the star. It tries to return cult into the mechanical form. It tries to create the cult of the star, the cult of personality around the star, right. Now, this is not the cult of the star, is not the aura of the person or the actor, but it is a spell of personality. It is not the person himself, but a spell of personality. It is a constructed personality. It is the spell that is created through commodity production, right. Now, let us go back to now he is going to make, we are going to see what connection he makes with fascism. So, let us go back to one of our previous slides. This is in photography, in fact, as an example to mechanical reproduction. There is no original, and this leads to a reversal of the function of art from ritual to politics. This, he says, gives shape to the arts for art's sake stance. Now, when artistic objects have a certain ritual significance, they are not the evaluation is derived from their ritual significance, right, the cult value. Whereas, as we have seen that with the coming of mechanical reproduction, the reproduced objects, in our case books, do shape society and politics to a great extent. They do participate in politics. However, participation in politics also means that at the end of the day, what is politics? Politics has to deal with power. And who would be interested in politics? Only those who would be interested in politics who would like to change the way the relationships of power are exercised. Anyone who wants to question the existing relationships of power would be interested in politics. The arts for art's sake stance works against it. It is a hegemonic position. It is a position of privilege. It is a position of power, which says that art is only to be practiced on its own, and should not get shaped to a political movement, or should not make a political statement, right? Because to politics is to give shape to a different kind of power relationship, is to question power relationship, is often to take a critical stance, to take an analytical stance. And the other point where he talks about the creation of the cult of the star, this is the spell of commodity, right. Now, this he links to the way fascism operates. He says that what fascism does is that through the creation of this cult of the star, the cult of personality, it tries to give a certain guidance, create a certain habit within the proletariat, within the people, within the larger sections of the mass audiences. With mechanical reproduction, certainly the audiences are mass audiences, very large audiences. It tries to organize these audiences towards its own favor by creating a habit which centers around the cult of personality, to the cult of the star. And and within fascism, certainly, who is the real star? The star is the supreme authoritarian figure, the leader, the Führer, right. And it tries to organize the mass audiences in favor of the ruler. So, without questioning the structure of property, without questioning the power relationship, that they are more habituated to celebrating the cult of the star without questioning or analyzing what that actor is actually portraying on the screen. they are sucked into it, and this prevents a critical or political reading of art, and it strengthens the arts for art's sake domain. He says what fascism thrives upon is an aestheticization of politics, moves people away, moves mass audiences away from the exercises of rights to the expression of rights. It is a far more vacuous, it is exercised in a certain kind of a hollowness, where people may not have rights, but they are happy with a certain cult which tries to tell them that their ability to enjoy this cult itself is an expression of right, and the real rights of the things that matter to them, education, shelter, food, nutrition, the health, these are not the issues that really matter, but what really matter is that they get to have a certain access to this cult of the star. So, that is his criticism of fascism. The way fascism operates is to create this cult of personality around which the audience is allowed to function. We shall look through this theme furthermore in the next lecture with a discussion by Raymond Williams, which will allow us to look further into this domain of the electronic media. Thank you.